Go first. Rebecca or Maggie, it doesn't matter. Fine, either way.
Yeah. Okay, I've got Rebecca in here first, so We'll do it that way. All right, well, welcome to today's coffee break. I am Julie Vella, the chair of the Higher Ed and Emerging Professionals Committee, and we're excited to feature this networking opportunity with the Missouri Gateway chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council. I don't know how much I need to go through Zoom with us. I'm sure we're all very familiar with it at this point, but just remember to keep it muted unless you're speaking, be respectful of others, and we want this to be a fun conversation. So feel free to talk without being called upon, but if you want to join the conversation and other people are talking, just use one of the reactions and we will get back to you. So the Higher Ed and Emerging Professionals Committee has been doing the Green Mentor Program for a couple of years now, and we've run into some obstacles with the pandemic. So we're trying to mix it up a little bit. And today we have Green Mentors in the sustainability, education, and community professions that we're going to talk to just get a sense of how they've gotten to where they are, what they do, and what they wish they knew before before they got into their profession. So today we have our special guest, Rebecca Hankins, with the partnership. She's the partnership coordinator for Forest ReLeaf of Missouri. After spending 16 years in the outdoor industry, she shifted her focus from outdoor recreation to environmental stewardship. Last fall, she earned a certificate of proficiency in horticulture at St. Louis Community College, Merrimack. She spent the last 3 years gaining experience in the green industries with various organizations, including the Missouri Botanical Garden, Urban Harvest, and Detail Studio, where she not only practiced horticulture, but learned about equity topics, including environmental justice and food apartheid. Her awareness inspired her to partner with local organizations to create a social justice and horticulture conference in March of 2020. This past January, she joined the team at Forest ReLeaf as their new partnership coordinator. Her role focuses on growing community partnerships throughout the region. She's passionate about plants and what they teach us about resiliency, diversity, partnership, and community. And she continually uses her skills to advocate for social and environmental justice. We also have Maggie Mccoy, Education and Volunteer Coordinator with the EarthWays Center of the Missouri Botanical Gardens. As the Education Coordinator, she provides programs to K-12 students on the topics of waste reduction, stormwater management, and energy efficiency. She also trains teachers on bringing these same topics to their classrooms. Since reducing wasted food is a passion of hers, she provides classes on reducing waste at home and at work, through adult classes, and is part of the One STL committee that works to address wasted food in the region. Maggie formerly worked at both the zoo and the Endangered Wolf Center and has an extensive history in conservation and sustainability education. She graduated from Loyola in Chicago with a Bachelor of Science in Biology and a Master in Secondary Education. She loves being able to connect people to information and skills that will help them make more sustainable choices. And outside of EarthWays, Maggie loves cooking, spending time outside running, hiking, and biking with her family. So welcome to both of you. I think we'll let Rebecca start and just talk a little bit about what you do, what your education background is, what a typical day looks like, and if there's any ways that you've gained experience for your job that isn't necessarily education related. And then we'll let Maggie do the same and just have a little discussion. So
great. Thank you so much, Julie. I appreciate the introduction. Yeah, so I'm Rebecca Hankins, and I'm the partnership coordinator for Forest ReLeaf of Missouri, and we are a nonprofit tree nursery located in Creve Coeur Park, Missouri. We grow about 20,000 trees every year that we give away to the region and actually the whole state to be planted on public and nonprofit lands. So that's our organization. And what I do with them is actually a very new role for the organization. And so my role is evolving as I'm in it. So it's kind of interesting and hard to kind of explain what I do, just like what I typically do, because there's been no like typical day yet. So as we all know, environmental racism, environmental justice. These have become really hot topics in the last year and a half. And a lot of people are trying to understand what does that mean and how do we address these issues. And so my role has been to kind of figure that out. And I have been a part of a lot of presentations and meetings where we realize all of us are trying to figure this out. And so that's been really cool in that it's, we all recognize that we don't have all of the answers and that we are trying, as we move along in our day-to-day activities, that we're all trying to figure this out and do a better job. So my role as a partnership coordinator is to engage the community and to really focus in on those topics of environmental racism and environmental justice as it pertains to trees and tree equity. And so I do a lot of talking with organizations in communities. I talk with local residents. I really want to understand what trees mean to communities, how we can get more trees into communities, how do the residents feel about that, and how do they want to work with us to do that. And so, you know, we recognize that what we've done in the past to get trees in the community doesn't work for all communities because of those environmental justice issues that often stem from disinvestment in communities. These are communities that are have higher poverty rates, have transportation issues, have homelessness issues. And so we have to recognize that trees are very valuable as a green infrastructure, and they provide a lot of benefits to communities, to human health aspects in terms of providing shade, which lowers energy costs, capturing stormwater, which reduces basement flooding, health, cleaning the air, which reduces asthma rates. But at the same time, trees might seem like a luxury to these communities. And so how do we work with these communities to get the trees into the communities where they're needed, but recognize what the limitations are? So my role day to day just sort of changes, and it involves a lot of conversations. And because of the pandemic, I was hired in during the pandemic. So I really out the gate just had to do a lot of emailing and phone calls. But now as things have opened up, I've really gotten out into the community at tabling events, which is really great because having a face there showing presence builds trust in communities. And so as we go through changing through the pandemic and how does that look, it does just involve a lot of communication. So I get to my background with horticulture and learning about trees is important because I need to be able to have a competent conversation with people and educate them about the importance of trees. But a lot of my skill set has to be, being public facing, having conversations with the community, building trust, and just showing up. So I think that sort of answers some of the initial questions. And so I'll let Maggie talk about her role. And then if you have additional questions for me, we can go from there.
Excellent. Thanks, Rebecca. And I think I just had some pictures that I put together of some of the stuff that I do to answer some of those questions as well. And I think a little bit like Rebecca, there is no normal day in my job. I don't know what a typical day is. They're all different, which I think is really great in this kind of work. But yeah, I work as the education and volunteer coordinator at EarthWays Center, which is the sustainability division of Missouri Botanical Garden. So what's really great is that I get to do a lot of work with schools and educators, but also the public just on issues of sustainability and steps that individuals can take in their lives toward becoming more sustainable. So sometimes that's just doing basic background information. So like helping people learn how their landfills work and what does our local landfill look like. But then also sometimes it's about composting. So those are our composting worms hanging out there on the right-hand side. Let's see what else. And then like how our recycling center works. So that's a lot of it, is sort of just learning how like the basics of waste work. Also thinking about stormwater management and how our streams work, and then also looking at energy efficiency and how we can make, you know, particularly schools more energy efficient, but how do we talk to kids about that? So I do a lot of that work directly with students and with adults in those areas by going into schools and teaching programs. But I think one of the really nice things that we get to do is to also work with teachers. So on the left-hand side, there's a group of teachers that we worked with. So we offer like year-long fellowship programs and also teacher professional development, where teachers can work with us for a full year on developing sustainability projects for their schools. So one of the things that we've noticed is that there's a lot of sustainability champions out there in school, but sometimes it's just one or two people, and they just need a little extra help or a little extra support in terms of making those projects come to life. So that's something that we get to do. So I think one of the best things about my job is getting to watch for a full year kind of how these projects bloom and develop these relationships with individuals in schools and also students. So that's been a really nice part of the job as well. And then we also help, there's that volunteer part in there as well. So we also get to help, and I get to help support the volunteers at the garden who help us sort out compost, recycling, and landfill at a lot of our major events too, to help divert waste from the landfill as well. So really having a hand in helping to make the garden itself more sustainable as well, and getting volunteers involved with that. So just depending on the season, it also that sort of determines what's going on that day. You know, and then also doing the student program. So on the left-hand side is us out with a model talking about stormwater management and how students can get involved with keeping their local water clean. And on the right is actually students doing a waste audit. So looking at the trash in their own school and kind of figuring out what they can do. I think I always knew I wanted to be involved with education in some aspect of it, or working with kids or working with adults, but not really sure exactly what that would look like. So I did study biology and secondary education in school and got certified to teach middle school and high school science. But in school, part of that looked like doing internships with education. So I think one of the first touches I got of sustainability working with it was working with biodiesel and a biodiesel lab in college. So being able to take a full-size, like garage-sized biodiesel reactor that takes old kitchen oil and boiling it down to what you see on the left-hand side there, which was a cart that could fit in the back of a van and go to schools. So I got to spend a year trying to figure out how to build that, lots of trips to the hardware store, learning about electricity and how to wire stuff together. So that was really interesting. I think that kind of started getting me going on this like broader topic of sustainability, but still like hadn't committed to working necessarily in this field. Afterwards, I was kind of like, I really like animals. Maybe I want to work in conservation. So after I finished school, I took some time off and went and worked on a research project in South America, studying palm trees and birds and the relationships between how birds spread around seeds. So this like palm tree that's on the right-hand side, you can sort of see all the little flowers there, or not flowers, but fruits. And then looking at how does this lovely fellow on the left here, the umbrella bird, actually spread those seeds around. So a lot of my job there was going through traps, as you can see on the side, and looking at what seeds birds had pooped out, which is a really glamorous job. But it was a really interesting look into like field work and how does that actually work with plants and what is it actually like on the ground. You know, I'm here now, so that's not exactly what I decided to do for my career, but it was really interesting to learn about. And so after I kind of came back from that, I knew I really wanted to be more in that teaching field. And ended up going to the zoo and working in their outreach department there, which involved a lot of strange things. So some of it was taking animals to schools and working in distance learning. And so showing animals off over the internet. But some parts of it were like, we got to work with the symphony during their some of their youth programming and bringing animals to life through music, which interestingly enough involved me dressing up in like a bee costume. So, you know, and hanging out with tortoises, or helping to build enrichment items for the animals. So like life-sized piñatas of animals, which, so lots of different things involved in that and sort of bringing education to folks, which was really fun. After that point, I ended up moving to the Wolf Center and working with them in terms of their youth education programs, but also conservation with Mexican wolves. So there's a little cutie there who's getting his little vet checkup. So, but being able to work with them, and I think this is, you know, kind of when I started working a lot more with communities and sort of controversial topics, because wolves and people living together is sort of threading a needle sometimes, and sort of thinking about how do we talk about topics that might be controversial or make people feel a little uncomfortable and change behavior, and really started diving into that. And I think that's kind of when I started thinking about taking a step back and looking at broader issues in terms of sustainability, which is really what ultimately ended up leading me to EarthWays Center. And it's been sort of a crazy ride. I've been here for 3 years, so about half of it has been during the pandemic. So I feel like it's been 2 different jobs completely during those 2 different halves. And this is kind of what it's looked like for the past year and a half. So some of it's like virtual teacher professional development, where we try and use technology to get teachers involved, and, you know, packing up kits to send them so they've got supplies for their classrooms and can really get involved with the professional development we're doing, even if we're not in person. And then also doing more community programs that are outdoors, as opposed to doing more indoor school-based programs, and sort of switching in that direction. So a lot has changed and still continues to change in this field. I'm excited to see where it goes. We've been getting to work a lot with food waste in the past year, especially as it became, you know, kind of a hot topic as the pandemic arose and sort of wasted food. And there's been a lot of work in the St. Louis region done on it. So really looking forward to sort of that taking off in the future as well.
Thanks, Maggie. Rebecca, what was your education background?
Yeah, so like Maggie, I just want to point out that the path isn't always very direct. You think you know what you want to do, but oftentimes it's very circuitous. And so I actually got a degree in international business and Spanish. And I did that for 16 years. I worked for an outdoor recreation company. And what that actually kind of drew me to was the fact that they wanted to champion outdoor spaces because they need a place for people to play with their product. And so what I began to really see that passion and was like, yeah, I'm more interested in saving the outdoor spaces than I am to promoting product for people to play with. And so I didn't know what that looked like. And so I found the horticulture program at Merrimack. And so I jumped in with 2 feet, and it was such an amazing program and experience. And I learned so much. And you learn a variety of topics, how to ID plans, grounds management, just it's wonderful. But I wasn't really sure, even as I was going through the program, what I wanted to do when I finished. And I really began to realize I wanted to promote advocacy and stewardship, but there wasn't really a class in that. And so I had the great opportunity of getting roped into being the president of the Botanical Society. I will admit I wasn't putting my hand up to do it, but I'm actually really glad that I was asked to do it, and I took a chance and I did it, because it allowed me to get to know my fellow classmates really well. And it allowed me to activate and really kind of get a sense of what activism really looked like. And so during my time with the Botanical Society on campus is when I had the opportunity to create the Social Justice and Horticulture Conference. And I got to work with so many wonderful partners. And I just sort of threw it out there. And this was actually before the killing of George Floyd. And so we were talking about social justice and what that looked like in the field of horticulture and in the green industry in general. And amazingly, we had about 150 people from the industry attend the conference. And it was awesome. And people, after it happened and after the killing of George Floyd, I had a lot of organizations reach out to me and say, hey, you know, what kind of resources can we look into? And I realized that, you know, a lot of people have these questions, and how do we address these really hard topics? Like Maggie was saying, you know, there are some topics that are just really difficult to talk about. And, you know, everybody loves trees, but we don't really want to talk about the fact that trees aren't in, you know, places where they need to be, that there's this thing called tree equity, and there's been a lot of disinvestment, and, you know, trees aren't equally distributed across cities and across states. And so my path then ended up, which I never really got schooling for, it was just me getting out there and doing this additional work on my own, which led me to my job. It was the executive director of Forest ReLeaf, Meredith Perkins, attended the conference and saw the work I had done to put this together. And she reached out to me and said, hey, I've got this position I'm creating, and I would love to interview you about it. And so you just never know what you do and who you connect with that will lead to the opportunities for a job that you will actually be very passionate about. And so that's something that was really important to me during my time at Merrimack, was to network. I felt it was so important to go to every industry event that I could attend, sign up for every kind of mailing list with organizations that were doing the work. So like USGBC, Wild Ones, the Audubon Society, EarthWays, Biodiversity, 1STL. I just, as I heard about them, I signed up for their newsletters, and I just read, and I began to understand and see what they were doing in the region, and just showed up to events and stuck my hand out and introduced myself. And that's how you can really find opportunities and very niche jobs. And so not just relying on what's posted and hope, you know, that you get an interview or that you fit the job description. Oftentimes when people know you and what your passion is about and who you are, then they begin to see, oh, hey, yeah, we have this job and you have this skill set, and we can kind of tailor that to you. So
that is a very interesting trajectory. Thank you for sharing. And that kind of leads us, I have more questions for both of you guys if we have time, but I would like to talk a little bit about how we can better engage the emerging professionals and higher ed students. And Rebecca, I think you kind of got into that a little bit, but it seems as though the thing that may be lacking in a lot of cases is, you know, them actually understanding that this is their passion, and it, you know, they need to kind of make an effort to get out there and reach out to people. But how do you guys have any thoughts on how we can better engage them in the chapter and in this sustainability community? Maggie, I know you deal a lot with K through 12, but any thoughts that either of you guys have on that topic would be super helpful for us moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we do like the Green Shadow program, which has been a little bit harder this past year because of the pandemic. But I think for at least me, kind of like Rebecca was talking about, I had to try on a lot of hats before I had an idea. And I still can't, 100% say that, this is what I'll be doing forever. The more I learn, the more I think about, oh, like, that's really interesting. And now I kind of want to do something with this. So I think it'll just continue to grow. But, in the middle of that whole trajectory, I taught math for a year, which is crazy, because I was like, I have to do something, and I was pretty young, and I just kept trying stuff out until something felt like it really connected. But I think having internships definitely helped with that, and paid internships. So the internship I did do in college was paid, which I think was really useful. And I know that's a conversation that's been ongoing within a lot of different spaces and industries, as how do we pay interns for their work to make it a more diverse and equitable opportunity. I still have, one foot in the zoo world sometimes too, and I know that's an ongoing conversation in that field as well. But thinking about how can we offer opportunities to lots of different emerging professionals, but in a way that's paid and compensates people for their time and their effort there. Because I think it took me a long time to find out kind of what I wanted to do. And a lot of that was assisted by the fact that I got paid to do a lot of those opportunities, or at least got some sort of stipend for doing them. So I know that's a big way that I was able to get experience.
I would just add that, so as a person who's got into this field older, like I already had a career, I have a different perspective than, the 20-something person. And I found myself sort of mothering a lot of my classmates and just encouraging them to get out there and to network, because I had the experience of being in the business world and understanding the value of networking. And, for them, just starting out, they don't quite see, that value. And so just really stressing the networking, and then kind of meeting them at their level, like what interests teenagers nowadays and young emerging professionals in their early 20s, what is capturing their interest, or in what ways can we engage in, and kind of let them direct that, find somebody who would be willing to become, a leader, and let them, develop sort of a way to reach others. Really getting out there on campuses, maybe just being present and showing up, and trying different outlets, like I did Merrimack and was horticulture. And so, that's different than what is your typical, probably a professional in USGBC, but just getting out onto different campuses, being in person, meeting people, letting them know that, that you're there and that you're providing a resource for them.
So I need to learn TikTok, is what you're saying.
Perhaps.
Anything else, Freddie? Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, we can wrap up. Well, I was just curious, were there like any like particular like resources that were helpful, like when you were like, say Rebecca like decided, like I do want to, get an education in horticulture, or, Maggie, like finding your internships and different things like that. Was there anything that you felt like was really quite useful or that you could go to, or
was it just chance?
Oh, I think I'm gonna agree with Rebecca here, at least in terms of the networking, which is which I know can also be really scary. Like I know when I was younger, it was a little intimidating, but I think, in St. Louis, so many of these organizations are so like connected with each other, and you hear about one place and you hear about one another. And I think kind of how, I ended up finding EarthWays, at least, or my current position, was just like, keep putting myself out there, going to some of these like professional events in the evening, and continuing to network even when I already had a position, and you would just hear about certain organizations or certain places would always be at the same types of events, and you'd kind of get an idea for what work they were doing. And I think that kind of sort of, brought my attention to certain organizations and the work that they were doing and how they were operating in St. Louis and what their mission was, where as if I hadn't been doing that sort of work and networking, I might not have known that any of these things existed. So I think that was a really big part of it. So I know Rebecca already mentioned 1STL as being one of those organizations that, they do a sustainability lab right now that's free every month. They're virtual now, but they used to be in person, where you can learn, and they always have different topics. So it's not just one topic, but there's quite a variety in there. Signing up for newsletters, like she said too. But then just going to some different events as well. USGBC is a great one, because there is such a wide variety of professionals in there. But just getting out there and seeing kind of what's available. I didn't even know that there was a sustainability division of the garden. And so I was like, I keep seeing this EarthWays logo in a lot of places. Like, who are and so I didn't even know. And so I think sometimes there's opportunities that you wouldn't have even thought of. That the more you put yourself out there and the more you see, the more you actually learn that sort of position's available.
What you guys were both talking about networking, and I think while we're all kind of tired of being on Zoom calls, one of the nice things about the evening programs, the USGBC evening programs being virtual, is that you're kind of forced into the networking in the pre-programs, and but it seems as though it's a lot easier to just talk to people that way than necessarily in person. So that's one thing that I've found to be nice for those evening programs.
Yay.
Good job, Freddie. Good job mixing it up.
Thanks. That's great.
Doing what we can.
Yeah.
I would just add one last comment, is that, yes, we're all burnt out about being virtual, but it really does open up a lot of opportunity to try out different things without a big time commitment. You don't have to drive there.
No travel.
So if it's somewhere far away, you can just log in. I mean, you can even attend virtual things out of state. I mean, there's just so much opportunity. And the great thing is, if you aren't available at that moment and you've just registered, you often get it, the link
later
to watch the recording later when it's convenient for you. And so there's really no excuse at this point with, all that's available through technology to not be like, getting out there and trying out, as Maggie said, kind of trying on different hats. And it's just a great way to kind of like put your toe in and say, hey, do I like this? Or, hey, there's somebody over here talking in this field, or, and it's just, you can quickly experience in 30 minutes or an hour presentation meeting. Is that something that interests you? Do you want to pursue that further? So, use what we have, turn that negative of being I'm burnt out into a positive of, this is a way for me to experience more than I could with, before the pandemic. So I'll end with that.
I love that. Yeah. Perfect. Well, yeah, I just don't want to stop talking with you guys. This has been great.
I know, I have so many more questions.
I love this. Yeah, we'll have to do this again, definitely. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks, Julie. Yes, have a lovely weekend.
Thank you both.
Friday.
Thank you both for organizing this. And yeah, if anybody has any questions for me, they can reach out to me. My email is rebecca@moreleaf.org. Check us out at Forestry Leaf website, moreleaf.org, and be happy to answer additional questions that anybody may have about my particular job, or, forest relief, or anything, tree equity, anything.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you both for organizing this.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Have a lovely weekend.
You guys too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.